This panel provides an opportunity for all of you to hear from each of our panelists and learn how they engage with their communities. They'll speak to their own experiences with community engagement and what government needs to know about their communities and how state agencies can better integrate equity into their engagement strategies. We have the Community Advisory Board members here. We have folks from the LGBTQ Youth Commission. We have staff from the LGBTQ Commission. We have folks from the Commission on Hispanic Affairs represented here today. Thank you all for coming. We have a diverse range of lived experiences here. It's our time to listen to you, and it's also time for us to take your words to heart. To our panelists, feel free to speak your truth. This is your time to make your voices heard, and we are here to listen. So no need to censor anything. Give us the tea. We will have 3 questions that you all have agreed to speak on and share your experiences, feedback, and how government can better integrate equity into community engagement strategies. Each panelist will speak, taking about 3 minutes per question. I'll do an awkward wave if y'all going over. We got some really good speakers here. Next slide. And there we go. So Carol will now introduce both herself and the access slide.
Hi, Kara Chung, she, her pronouns, also with the Community Advisory Board. Just want to introduce access needs for today. Asking that presenters on stage just speak clearly and slowly for our CART and ASL translations. For folks in the room, please feel free to eat, stand, walk around as needed for your comfortability. For all virtual attendees, please throw in chat if you have any needs. We do have virtual moderators who can help get your needs met. Next slide, please. We're going to go ahead and introduce the folks on stage. Drayton Jackson, he, him pronouns. He is a Community Advisory Board member with the Office of Equity. He's also the Executive Director of Homeless Poverty Management. We also have Latrice Williams. She, they pronouns. She is also a Community Advisory Board member at the Office of Equity, broker and owner of Vision Properties Real Estate and Senior Advisory for Leveled Up Reentry. Victor Liu, he, him pronouns, Community Advisory Board member at the Office of Equity and Principal Consultant. Twala Abrahamson, she, her pronouns, Community Advisory Board member at the Office of Equity and member of the Spokane Tribe.
We also have Laura Miller, she, they pronouns. They are a Community Advisory Board member with the Office of Equity, and they're also a student at Eastern Washington University, and they are an advocate for both sexual assault and the LGBTQ plus community. And we also have Desi Kunzer, she, they pronouns. They are LGBTQ Youth Advisory Board member and a member of the Yakima Pride organization. We also have Sam Fennell, he, him pronouns, and he's the Operations and Policy Manager at the LGBTQ Commission. And we also have Adon Suarez. Adon prefers name over pronouns. And Adon is a Community Development Officer with the Commission on Hispanic Affairs. Adon is the State Advisory Committee member for Migrant Education Program. And Adon is on the Colima Pasco Friendship and Collaboration Association board member, and is on the HAPO Credit Union Advisory Board. Center. Okay, gotcha. And that's everybody. Next slide. So for the first question, how do you go about doing community engagement within your communities? And we can start with Victor.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, again. So again, my name is Victor Luz, he, him pronouns for this word contact. So I would say that as a East Asian first generation immigrant and also somebody that identify as non-binary, the way that I engage my communities from the Asian Pacific Islanders, Hawaiian communities, as well as LGBTQIA communities, I always think about culture competency and language access, which I think is really essential to reach our communities. And the other thing is, I also think that when I think about language, we all love to eat, right? So I think about food as a universal language. So for instance, when we hold community events in the Asian communities, the Asian community itself is so diverse. It's not a homogeneous community. There are over 40 plus of different demographics and ethnic group in our community. So many festivals to celebrate. So I think that we always need to be in the community to do the work. But also the pandemic taught us that we can also be creative, be innovative in using virtual spaces as well. But whenever we do that engagement, I also think about three key components. I reference cultural competency as an engagement and food as a universal language. So when people ask me to define using cultural competency as an engagement tool, I think about three key elements: mind, body, and spirit. And I just want you to take that away about how to engage the communities. Thank you.
For me, it's more, I've always tried to make space. I've been asked to be on so many boards and committees. And what I always try to do is give people like, hey, you need to be on this committee, you need to be on this board. Because I think that, especially with people with lived experience that may not have the degree, that may not have all of the letters behind the names, that we need to be in those spaces. So I'll give a perfect example. When I was on the health, when I was asked to be on the health board, I really went to like other people that I know that were people of color that, hey, you need to be on this. And everybody just didn't want to do it, right? Everybody made an excuse for it. But then when I got on the health board, and the outgoing executive director has said, man, like, you don't understand the richness that you bring with the experience of homelessness, the people in poverty, because they're not coming in that, right? So everything that I've always tried to do is put community in spaces that we need to be, no matter what that is, because I think having that different perspective, like there was things that they were going to do in the health board that would have affected the homelessness, but I can't be mad at them for not understanding what it was. They never went through homelessness, right? So the perspective that I brought, as the director said, man, I would have never thought about that. That's the way that I try to engage community, is try to advance them up and say, hey, these are opportunities that your voice can be heard. The biggest problem, though, is people, and I went through it too, is we don't feel that we belong in those spaces. So it makes it hard for us to show up in those spaces. And it's just coaching people up to say, hey, this helps us. Like this helps the area that you are, no matter what it is, and you belong there. So for me, it's always reaching into the community, seeing where people are at, but then advancing them up into things that they need to do.
Good morning, y'all. Sam Fennell, he, him. I'm the operations. I work at the LGBTQ Commission. And when I think about working with community, especially the LGBTQ community that expands across all cultures, all people in this world, I really have to think about how do I go to them, especially when I'm working with the LGBTQ community. Our most marginalized people of color, trans people of color. These are also people who are at capacity, who are already over involved, who are already overdoing. And so if I'm thinking about how I'm going to engage with you, I have to give you clear structure. I can't ask you, well, how do you want to engage? Build how you want to engage with me, and then show up and do it too, because that's often what we're asking folks to do. So I think about, here's what I need. Here's how I can benefit from your knowledge, your experience. Here's how you can show up in our state government. And here's how I can show up for you. And it's a mutual conversation that we're having with each other. And then also the transparency with that. I work in state government. I've studied state government. It's confusing. It makes no sense. If have never studied it, I'm still learning it, and I gotta do things about it. And I'm like, well, here's what it is. And so when I'm talking to folks about how to engage, I'm also being honest with them about what our capabilities are and what we can do, because for a lot of folks, the sky's the limit. They're like, we can change it all. And it's like, eventually, but how do we get there and how do we build those steps? And so I want to be open and honest with them. And then the fun part about working with community is they have created solutions for how we change it. They can look at that problem that I'm stuck in for months and be like, here's how we work around that. And I'm like, you are absolutely right. So those are my two things when I work with community.
Hey y'all, my name is Desi Quenzer. I work for Yakima Pride, which is a pride organization here in Yakima. I'm also a member of the LGBTQ plus Commission's Youth Advisory Council. I've done a lot of work with the Department of Health as well, and a couple other things. I've been on quite a few advisory boards and panels. My biggest thing, I'm an LGBTQ plus individual. And I am also very, very young. My biggest thing is youth engagement is really important to me. Youth representation is really important to me. When I go to a lot of these events and panels and serve on these boards, I see a lot of adults that are, doing the work, and I really appreciate that. But I would love to see more people my age, more young people, representing as well, because I just feel like I bring the same thing to the table every time, and we definitely need more representation within young people because, they're our future. And what was I gonna say? Sorry, I'm like super nervous, guys. I apologize for that. Thank you. But yeah, that's my biggest thing is just youth representation, and then also just making it accessible for youth. A lot of young people, they rely a lot on their parents and the adults in their life to get them there and to show up for them. And I would like to hear the experiences of maybe people that don't have that, and that can be really hard with young people under 18. So I think making it accessible, social media and technology is such a huge thing right now in the world. And, a lot of young people look at that. They get a lot of their information from social media. And so I think just utilizing social media as, as a tool rather than a weapon is really important as well. Thank you.
Hey y'all, my name is Latrice Williams. I am from Spokane, Washington. It's important for me to say that because I'm over in Eastern Washington and sometimes we get left out. Okay, so I had to say that. So how I engage the community, and I have my phone because I wrote some stuff down so I don't forget. I am on several different boards and I listed them, but I'm not even going to say them all because I think I can just say that I represent all things housing. So I do own a real estate firm out in Spokane, in a property management company. And I think that the state has been really good at working towards repairing harm in that housing area. So all things housing, but the most important position that I play in the community is auntie. I am auntie. I'm gonna take you back to when community was really community, when we were raising each other's children, right? My mom's sisters and brothers, and if they saw me and I didn't speak, oh, it was a problem, right? I work in student support for Tier 3 students, so students that are connected in some way to the juvenile justice system. And when they see me, after they meet me, I don't care if they black, brown, yellow, gold, purple, whatever they are, they know Auntie Latrice. So you call Auntie Latrice before you call the police. You call me first because I'm going to come talk to them. What is you doing over here and why are you here? And I don't care who kid it is. And even the parents are even receptive to that. And I think that is a big place that we have to get back to as a community. And when I say community, I'm not even just saying Spokane. I'm going to take it to the whole state of Washington because we are all community. So when I see your child, or if you see my child in the streets and they doing something they ain't got no business doing, or even if they're doing something that they did something right? Like if they are out there just moving in their community in positive ways as well, we need to be there to support them in those ways. Auntie Latrice is proud of you, baby. I'm proud of you. And so that's the position that I play in the community. And I want all of us to somehow pick up that position as well. So I'm here activating everybody. The word today is activate. You have to be activated to do what you need to do where you live in your community and bring it back. Next year, I want to hear about all these aunties and uncles out here.
My name is Twella Abrahamson, and I am a Spokane tribal member, and also descendant of the Colville, Coeur d'Alene, and Navajo nations. And our community, from the Spokane Reservation, my background is in environmental justice. We have 2 open pit uranium mines in our community. So from community organizing for so many years, we were up against not only the federal government, the state government, but one of the largest international mining companies in the world. And so elevating and empowering our community to be involved in processes that affect us. That was our main goal, is empowering our own community. And some of the founders of our grassroots organization, there were other speakers that talked about being watchdogs in your community. They actually founded in the 70s and 80s their own newspaper. And so it was a community-led, written, published newspaper. And so from our perspective, that was getting our own stories out. And so when we start doing organizing in the community, it was teaching our young people how to use media as a tool versus, you know, being impacted by the stereotypes that are out there. And it was, you know, giving them the tools to tell their own story, whether that be in print media, photography, videos. And what we found was, because of the location of our reservation, the internet access wasn't there, the cable television wasn't there. And so for us, the most effective way to reach our community was radio. And because it was free and because it was timely, a lot of the publications were monthly. So our tribal newspaper and, you know, we're coming out once a month. So to get timely information out, it was definitely radio. And we had to just put some of the other technologies aside because our community wasn't able to access it.
Buenos dias. My name is Adan Suarez. Good morning. And I'm with the Commission on Hispanic Affairs here in the state of Washington. The way I have been engaging community, and first and foremost, I grew up as a migrant seasonal farm worker in Franklin County, and one of the things is that that's where I feel like a lot of my upbringing started with work in the fields, and so I can relate to a lot of migrant seasonal farm workers in the area. I have a lot of family that still do that, and so similar to Latrice is, you know, you're attending on a private or personal level, you're attending games and so forth, and you're interacting at a personal level that carries on to work. You're volunteering on several boards. I volunteer on 3 different boards, and so my time is building relationships in community. So I've been with the commission for a year, just over a year. There's 4 CDOs, community development officers, on the team, and we're embedded in community. And that's one thing that CHA has recognized, is that each one of us is somehow embedded in community, and we go about doing community through events, cultural events. One of the things is that, you know, we interact with a lot of NGOs, faith-based organizations, community leaders. I host meetings at local coffee shops in the area so that I can engage community. They can see me, they can engage, ask me questions about what's going on. This last year, we've been doing a community needs assessment. We surveyed our Latino community this past year. We're currently sifting through the information, pulling information out, and we're gonna go about presenting information to the community through meetings. We do community connection sessions where we engage community on asking them what's important to them, what are the strengths, weaknesses, and so forth. I want to say that part of that, and I was really appreciative of learning about the Community Reinvestment Plan, the HEAL Act, is that we have been paying our community through stipends for the work that they put in to respond to our surveys. And it's been very beneficial to get that information. We also engage our community through campaigns like Hispanic Heritage Month, which we've been doing this past month. Voter registration, we're doing, and in social media, obviously, we're doing Latina Equal Pay Day, just to name a few, but we engage our community through social media. All of our materials in Spanish and English, we want to make sure that everybody understands what we're putting out and how they can communicate to us on our website. One other thing, and this is really important to me, I've done community engagement for over 10 years, and my prior work was developing property and building community in my prior work. And, this past summer, a few of us, through our office, we were able to begin, focus groups in Mattawa. There was a shooting that happened, and we attended a vigil. And to me, that was part of community engagement, is to stand in solidarity with the family, the community during a time of need, which carries on. I had a mother open up to me, just like started talking about her son and how he was engaged in gang violence, and that she was able to pull him away, but it hasn't been 100%. And so she was really giving me information that I didn't even ask for, but I was there present and listening. And that's what was important. And so I believe in engaging community. People need to feel seen, heard, and valued. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alora Miller. I go by she, her, they, them. Community is honestly everywhere and everything. I am a student at Eastern Washington University. I am graduating this spring. I am also applying for a master's program in clinical counseling. I engage community by being present on my campus. I see the things that most adults don't get to see, the voices that go unheard because they are younger. I am also the co-president of my local Psi Chi chapter, which is sorry, I'm very anxious and I forget a lot of things. It is the good grades thing. Whatever that is. Whatever, yeah, that word. For psychology students. And we are engaging that by being present in homecoming, which is actually tomorrow. And that is one of the biggest drinking nights for all students. There are some restaurants in Cheney that have non-alcoholic drinks. So everyone has an opportunity to participate and have fun. And this intersects with another community I'm a part of, being a sexual assault advocate. And unfortunately, there have been instances of roofing on my campus in the past few weeks. So I'm going to be handing out drink covers for everyone who needs it. Non-judgmental, it doesn't matter. Make sure you're safe. And basically just being a part of community is standing there non-judgmentally and just making sure that you are safe, seen, and that no matter where you are in life, you're just being represented. That's how I engage with my community, just being a representation of what needs to happen, just being there to listen.
Thank you, everyone. We're able to go back to the PowerPoint slide. Our next question for our panelists is, what message would you want the new governor-elect to know about your communities? And we'll start with Victor again.
Yeah. I would say that first of all, new governor, right? This is a very, very important election year. It just causes me more anxiety than when we talk about that. But I think for the new governor or elected officials to know more about my community is that really to address disparities and then increasing access. So a few key things that I will talk about for the Asian communities and also the LGBTQ communities that I don't think it's a it also affects BIPOC and Native community definitely, which is really the access disparities. And beyond that, I'm also thinking about housing, right? We know, so I really hope that that will be a priority, that we can figure out how to address homelessness and house and shelter as a public health issue and how we can resolve it. I live in Seattle King County, which I appreciate living there because I want to say that in Seattle King County, we have more resources to address housing and unsheltered issue. Unfortunately, it is still increasing, but I'm also thinking about given a city like Seattle and King County already has more resources, and yet we are facing unhoused, homeless, unsheltered issue. Other county who lack resources, or even when we talk about geographical location in rural and tribal areas, I hope that those can be addressed by government about how to really make housing affordable for everybody. And because without stable housing, it impacts an individual because without a stable housing, it can affect your overall physical health, behavior health, mental health, substance use disorder issue. But I think fundamentally, housing is also part of social determinants of health. There are still many priorities that I just hope that can be addressed. But I just think that the key, if we look around now, if we go to the streets, we see lots of encampments, and it's just an increasing issue. And then we know that severe weather is coming, and over those time, it can affect people's life and death. I'm somebody with lived and living experience who had experienced homelessness with unstable housing as a first generation East Asian immigrant that I referenced earlier. I often tell this story when I testify to legislators about housing as a human right. I live on a mattress with my two brothers until the age of 6. So we shared that mattress together. It makes me understand and empathize with what we need to do to address that. And I reference why housing is a key priority because, again, without stable housing, it affects primary care, behavioral health care, and social determinants of health. And I just hope that it is something that we can address. It's not an easy task. It's going to be a heavy lift to address it. But I just think that we are also fortunate to live in the state of Washington. And I just think that we have the Office of Equity in the state of Washington. I just feel that there are things that we can continue to do collectively to really advocate. And I like the word that Latrice used about activate. And how can we activate to turn it into an action steps to make sure that there is affordable housing for everyone, because there are countries that are provide free housing. And I just think that there is a way that perhaps we can reach there one day.
Took my first part. But I was gonna say with housing. Thank you. For me, I would say this, and this is real, that Black people that were born here in Washington State, that they call this their home, are suffering. That they really have been victimized of racism, blind racism, and racism in a way that I have never ever seen it. And I think making space for Black people in this state has to be more of a push to make sure that we're seen, not just put in position, but seen and given power. And I say that to say that if you look at all of the data, right, even though I question a lot of the data, we're not the majority, but then in jail, in poverty and everything, we are. And it made me just realize like how much that things have happened to Black people in Washington State that is not being shown, that's not being pushed out enough to say that how can we help you? And when I started the foundation, one of the things that I made sure is that we're open to everybody, but giving space to people of color. And I watched how people did not want it. And it just made me think, like, why don't you want this position? And then conversations would happen, and it would just be like, well, I don't deserve it. I don't think that I can. And it just made me look at positions, even in state government, that Black people had. And it wasn't positions that gave power, positions that showed the position, but it didn't give power. And it just made me start thinking that, man, we really don't have the power that is there. But then it also made me think, how much trauma has Black people in Washington State have went through? So any governor that's coming in, how do we started first with the Office of Equity, and then having a Black woman like Megan running it, right? I think that's a great start because that's power in shifting. But then also, how do we make that space for community? as a small organization. When I started the organization, the biggest fight back that I got was from white people that was in power that was used to getting the money. And then when we started putting our name and stuff and taking away grants, we started to have this pushback that was combined. And what they hated was I didn't step down. I didn't care. Like my whole team, we was like, no, we're gonna show up. I have an Asian woman that sits with our board, and she is just like, no, we're gonna do this. I don't care. We're gonna show up. And I think a lot of times we get pushed down so much because the stuff that I've been through, if I wasn't born in Brooklyn, New York, and went through that stuff already, I would come here and I would have just folded with the stoppage. And I think that it's not being seen. And I think we need to figure out a way. The office equity is the first step, but I think there needs to be a way that we can go in and heal the Black community in Washington State.
I think I'd want the new governor to know to continue investing. These programs we have created, these programs that exist, continue investing in them, continue supporting them, and continue growing them. You know, sometimes I think we really want data and we really want to say, how is this improving lives? And it always improves lives to engage with equity, engage with community. It is always beneficial to the community, even if the numbers don't show it. So I think we need that shift at times of just because we're investing in this and it doesn't produce the metrics we think it should, it doesn't mean it's not worth the investment, because we've already heard the stories here and you can't put a dollar sign on any of those stories. So that would be my first thing. And then my second thing is, if you do want the data, then invest in the data. One of the things we deal with within the LGBTQ community is there is not numbers. A lot of the numbers are on a federal level. A lot of other communities face this with their identities being lesser, and what you get to select, you have to choose an other if you're male, female, or other. What does that mean? How does that data look? Sexuality, we're not collecting. We were going to collect it on a census level, and then it was removed. And so when we're thinking about this data and we're thinking about politicians, they ask, what data is it? Your community doesn't exist in rural areas. Your community doesn't exist here. And it's like, you don't know that. You don't know if they've been shoved away. You don't know if they get to be out. We haven't asked those questions and we haven't shown up. So ask the questions of what data are we collecting and what is it missing, and continue to question those systems that we have created and how can we do better in them. So those would be my thoughts.
So for me, my biggest focus in all the work that I do is representing rural communities and representing LGBTQ plus individuals within rural communities. I've lived in Yakima all my life. You know, I've grown up here as a queer individual. And there's definitely some struggles that queer people in rural communities face that they don't really face in, you know, larger communities, places like Seattle. And the biggest thing for me is healthcare, getting gender and sexuality inclusive healthcare, and then just having different healthcare and specialists available in general in rural communities. You know, I've experienced that firsthand, how difficult it is to get healthcare that, you know, is inclusive to me and how I identify. And then my other big thing is, you know, like I said, grew up in a rural community. I also grew up like in the agriculture community. So, you know, I showed cows, I did FFA, I did all that. And I'm not really someone that looks like I did that. You know what I mean? And so I think just, what's the word I'm looking for? I think just, having representation is really important in everything. And so, you know, I would like to see people, you know, like me, that look like me, that identify how I do, you know, in positions of power, like we've already said. You know, I think representation is extremely important, and I think representation from rural communities is also extremely important. Thank you.
My answer to this for a message to the new governor is, first I have to speak about the current governor and what he has worked to put together, what he signed into law. There are a couple things that to throw out there. Shout out about the Covenant Homeownership Act. If you all have not heard about that, yeah, that was a big deal. It was a big deal. It's folks who can prove that they were in Washington State prior to 1968, April of 1968, Black, Indigenous, people of color, or their lineage. So not just that person, but their lineage, repairing the harm. And I told y'all I'm all things housing. So but Victor, you did a good job. So I ain't even going into that because everything Victor said, and then everything that Drayton said, everything that, okay, all y'all, right? But I do think that, first of all, I just want to give a shout out to him for that. I think for the new governor, watching and learning from that and bringing his own perspective, and not just staying with his own perspective, right? Because in leadership, leaders have to first know how to serve. You got it.
Yes.
It's biblical. Maybe we're not all following that. It's biblical. You have to, in order to lead, you have to be a good servant. And so what does that look like? That looks like boots on the ground. That looks like just because you live in Olympia don't mean that you don't come to Eastern Washington. That means that you frequent us often because you think about us over there as well. So I'm not going to say too much more because I really feel like y'all did that already. And so all things housing, following through with investments is huge. What we already have into play, the community reinvestment plan, you mentioned that, I don't even know how many pages it is, 200 and something pages worth of just repairing the harm that was done by different governments, right? So that wasn't just a Washington State thing, but I think Washington State being in, because the state of Washington is in a leadership position because they're the only state that has the Office of Equity, and they're the first state for a racially driven home loan. Okay, so there was I know y'all got a couple minutes, a minute and a half. Okay. So the Fair Housing Act, the reason why they wanted to, they want you to prove your residency prior to April 1968 is because the Fair Housing Act was passed. Okay. That means before there were restrictive covenants that are probably still on some of y'all properties right now. Even if you're not a homeowner, you might be living in a property that says no person but that of white blood shall occupy this property unless they have been a domesticated servant. I do not need to spell that out for you. I do not need to spell that out for you. You know what that means. No person of Negro blood shall occupy a property. So when they talk about Covenant Home Ownership Act and where we are right now, that is your current governor that signed that into law. This is Washington State. This is Washington State. So let's not go backwards, new governor, whoever you might be. Let's keep progressive pressing forward.
Yes, yes. I love that. And I just echo, I'm so, grateful to be part of this panel and this amazing group of people. And one of the things that I, just as a tribal member, a tribal community member, that we definitely in Washington are leaders, but there's more to be done and to continue these investments. And right now there's a panel going on about tribal sovereignty and about the importance and the responsibility to consult tribes. But sometimes people stop at that 29 number, 29 federally recognized tribes. There's unfederally recognized tribes. There's 3 tribes in Washington that are confederated tribes. So the number is actually around double that. But also in our urban communities, nationwide, there's 574 federally recognized tribes. So here in Washington, we also have those tribal members represented. And when agencies or the state government only focuses on tribal government, you're leaving out the community. You're leaving out the people that have lived here, have died here, who are going to be buried here. And that needs to stop. And that more needs to happen. So we can't continue to do the bare minimum, and we need to also assist the tribes in that consultation process. So, learning here about the size of the state government and how many agencies and how many employees, when you look at a tribal community, maybe 9,000 in a state agency versus 1 tribal staff doing the same type of work. And so, more resources need to be directed towards tribes so they have the capacity to consult on that level with the state and the agencies and all of the, everything that's impacting tribal communities. So each tribe, diverse, with their languages, with their land, with their entire culture is completely dependent on the lands that surround them. So the foods that we ate, our housing, our clothing, everything depends on the land that we live on. So for us, coming from that perspective, when we look at our environment and we look at, our future generations. So our organizing is, multi-generational, and, we're listening to the elders, we're empowering our youth. And it's, the entire community as a whole coming forward, and that can't be ignored. That we're also, Washington citizens. We're, so meeting with only specific elected leaders would be like a state agency only meeting with the mayor and leaving out the entire city. And so what we fight as community is just being seen, being heard, and not, not being ignored.
Make your point.
So I think what we would like the incoming governor to know about our Hispanic Latino population is two areas or two focuses: is the strengths and the needs or change that needs to happen. And particularly in strengths, the Hispanic Latino community is very resilient, overcoming personal barriers, professional barriers. The community is very united, always want to help, lend a helping hand. The community is always, it has a big entrepreneurial spirit. The Latino community startup businesses is 2.5 times more than any other population. It's about 36% in startups. Now, always willing to learn, get educated, always looking to self-improvement. Safety and security, many have felt very safe when compared to their former country where they used to live. Now, there is a catch there. In rural areas, they felt safe. In urban big cities, they did not feel safe. A lot of jobs so one thing in surveying, I had, we'd ask, what are the strengths of your county? And it blew me away that instead of complaining, they were like, we have plenty of work. That was the thing. It was, we have plenty of work. The economic opportunities they're really grateful for. Culturally relevant events have been happening, and it's been increasing, and they're very appreciative of that. When we talk about age, youth compared to the rest of the population, our average age is 29.5 compared to 38 years of age. So we have a young workforce that is bilingual, just as an FYI. On the flip side, so overtime rule for farm workers has actually been devastating. Many have come to me and said, and my colleagues as well, and said, hey, I told our farm owner that, don't pay me overtime, just give me extra hours. So what's been happening is they've been limiting the hours that they've been giving to each farm worker. And so it's, we talked about housing. It's the cost of living has increased everywhere you look at: gasoline, groceries, homes, apartment rent. It's been devastating for the farm worker community. Discrimination still is occurring. One of the things that they've complained over and over again is when it comes to understanding their paycheck stub, they're not being explained exactly, or how to do direct deposits compared to their counterparts. Our community has been politicized and dehumanized, considering what the conversation around the border immigration topic. It's currently the political climate, and so just know that that's something that needs to change. More access to healthcare is something that they've been asking, and specialized doctors at affordable prices, and the need for translation services in healthcare. This is a language access issue. So that needs to change. Need for public transport in remote counties, and we've been hearing a lot more in some of the islands that there isn't that, and so they've been requesting that. Affordability in childcare and the need for affordability has been huge, or for childcare, I should say. Need for better support in smaller communities that can create programs for youth. We're learning that some of the rural areas don't have these support systems, and so youth tend to access other things that are not beneficial to their life, right? And to their families. And so there needs to be some more access to that. I think so what I mentioned, the feeling safe. So feeling the unsafe was in big cities, and it was due to drugs, gang violence, and homelessness. Thank you.
Something that I think the new governor should know is one, East Washington isn't Western Idaho for one.
Go ahead.
We do tend to get overlooked a little bit, more than a little bit in some cases. And that we are still part of Washington. And I see it in my community, like we don't feel represented a lot of the time because we get lumped in with Idaho so often. So just acknowledging that Washington, all parts of Washington are affected, that all parts of Washington are Washington to begin with. But another thing I'd like the new governor to know is, one, this is my first time voting for governor, for president of any, this is the first time I've done this. And the reason I bring this up is because I am a vote, I am a person that younger generations on campus are people. They are historically the demographics that vote the least because they feel underrepresented. They don't see themselves in the government. They are in a state of learned helplessness where they have tried to talk and been told to be quiet. So they don't try anymore.
Yes.
They don't see themselves, so they don't vote. Something I want the new governor to know is we are still here. Our voices matter. We exist, and our vote should count for something.
Next slide, please. Okay, so the last question is, how can we ensure that our state agencies integrate equity and community engagement, especially for marginalized communities, rural, tribal areas, and young people?
Yeah, so we already mentioned many times that we're proud to live in the state of Washington, being the only state that has the Office of Equity. And when I think about integrating equity in those areas, whether it's with community, rural areas, or the youth, I also want to flag that we don't want to forget the older adults as well, because it's also the population that often is neglected as well. But when I think about integrating equity, I always think about this reference around equity and equitable are two different things, right? Because resources are already so limited. And if we talk about communities who are impacted the most, oftentimes we are the ones that really have more disparities issues. So there was talk about having more investment in existing programs or programs that can create more impact and outcome. I just hope that the state agency, there are so many different state agencies such as like the SHS and Department of Commerce, which actually fund the bulk of the homelessness issue, the right of way, ROW. But I just think that I hope that through the Office of Equity and through the Community Advisory Board members that I'm so proud to be with some of my colleagues here, is that we can really figure out a way to integrate equity starting from policy, because I think that policy can drive actions and procedure. it may not be a very appealing thing to do because our CWs and WECs can be very heavy duties and boring. But I think but that is where I think needs to come first. The equities need to be embedded into policy and procedure and then drive it into impacts. Then we can advocate for funding, because without fundings, we won't be able to do the work that we want to do. And I really hope that the state agency will really take a good look at which communities are affected the most and which areas like tribal and rural areas are affected the most, and then prioritize those communities that are impacted the most. Because I think this is a safe space to say this. Oftentimes when there are funding being rolled out, what is through the state or the city or the county or the federal government, is usually the larger organization and the same organization that get the funding, because they have the infrastructure, they have a professional grant writer, but the communities who are impacted the most do not have those resources and infrastructure to do the work. That itself is already an equity issue, which is why I talked about equitable and equities are two different things. And I just think that we want to, again, without funding, we won't be able to do equity and justice work. So it's so important for state agency to be thinking about prioritizing, streamlining the process and simplify the process for communities who actually need the resources. Because again, the large organization may be doing wonderful, impactful work, but are they reaching the individuals who actually need the most resources? And oftentimes it's not happening. I can attest to that. So I think that we are a state that can be creative, can be innovative. We can be bold, like what the conference is about. So I just think that we need to take bold action, sweeping action, because government tends to move very slowly. So I think we need to make sweeping actions, be bold, and really, again, amplifying the communities who are impacted the most, prioritizing us, and stop funding the same old large organization.
So I love my brother. See, he said the majority of what I was gonna say. So keep what he's saying. All right. Stop making the grants inaccessible to everybody. I should not have to compete with a big organization. And when I started the organization, one of the things that I love commerce. Those are my people. I don't want to get in trouble. Those are my people, right? They hold the money. The problem is that if you got a 30-year-old organization in my community that's been getting the money all the time, and I want you to understand how we got here in housing. We got here in housing because they kept giving the money to the same people that ain't doing nothing. Scale me up. Let me do the work. So when I went to commerce, I'll never forget, right before the pandemic, and they started giving out all the money, we were all good getting the money, right? They didn't mind. You're doing the work. You're going to do the work. So now we came back because they saw the things that we did. We worked. They gave the money to the grassroots organization to do this work, right? But it was with the overseer. So if it didn't come through the big organizations that we had to, and a lot of the times when we were arguing with those organizations, we're like, that's not how this works on the ground level. They didn't understand half of the work that we were doing, like Victor was saying, right? So the key is the grants need to be, and the funding need to be in different pots. And when I say that, I should not have asked the question about things that have nothing to do with my organization on a 40-page application. And think about that if I don't have the capacity for my grant writer to try to go after that one grant and fill out all that information, why isn't that information transferred over? You already have it in the system. Why do I have to keep filling it out? So the grants and everything that comes out from government and state agencies need to be, hey, this organization on this level, this pot of money is for you, you're good. Answer these questions. These organizations for this level, you're good. Answer these questions. And then the next. I'll say this, when we got into housing, and I had to go off on the Office of Finance and the Housing Commission. And I'll never forget, they was like, well, you never built a house before, you never did this or before. And they were like, well, we don't think that you qualify to get this. We own land now, right? We own land. I want you to understand this. When I got on that Zoom and I said, you don't know who I know. All of the investors that I know don't know how to build housing, but they know how to pay somebody else that does it. So I said, so if you're going to judge me on that, then judge me on my team and who I'm bringing to the table to make sure that this gets done. And that's the problem that I think we have. We look at the organization as you don't have scale, but then scale me up. Show me the way that it can make it happen, because otherwise my lived experience in homelessness and living in the projects, trust me, I know how to build this housing better than anybody else knows how to do it. That's in government, right? But then don't judge me based off of your rules that don't exist. Don't ask me the questions that have nothing to do with getting the job done. So we have to make sure that, like Victor was saying, it has to be different levels that we're doing. I should not be competing as a small organization with a bigger organization and the staff and the work that they have to do. We have to streamline things directly to those organizations that doing boots on the ground and doing the hard work.
I think when I'm thinking about working with these communities and when we're thinking about engagement, when we're asking these folks to come to the table, we have to listen to them. We just heard two incredible ideas on how to fix these systems. And for a long time, it's been a lot of white people in these places that don't do a lot of listening. And they ask for it, and it's a lot of tokenization in these spaces without any listening to folks. And so if we're gonna ask for these opinions, we're gonna ask for these insights from these individuals in their communities of how we can make it better, we then need to listen and do it. And so I'm thinking about rural communities, tribal communities, marginalized communities. I'm not willingly a city boy, but I didn't grow up in the rural area. I know nothing about what it means to do raising cows. I know nothing about this. I know nothing about policies that's going to work. And Washington's a big state. We're massive. We have completely different climates. If you go to Eastern versus Western, those are different policies that are needed. And so we have to think creatively about the policies we're making, because what's going to work for Seattle is not going to work for Spokane. So how do we build something that works for both of them? Because we often are a monolith. We make what works for Seattle because that's our biggest city. That's our heavily populated city. And it's not a monolith for the entire state of Washington. And so that's the one thing. And it's just back down to listening. I mean, and earning that trust within our communities. We have to earn the trust, especially working within our tribal nations. And when they tell us what they need, we have to just listen instead of question it. I will never forget sitting in a class. A tribal member came to my class and said what they needed. And afterwards, we're sitting in the roundtable discussion. And one of my classmates goes, but there's got to be more we can do. Let's come up with solutions. How can we make this better for them? And I'm like, no, 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 no. You heard what the tribal leader said they needed, and that's what we're going to do. I know it might not feel like enough. I know you might have a little bit of white guilt that's making this come out, but we just need to sit down and listen. And then as we build that trust and as we revamp these systems, we will fix them within our communities.
So I'm a third generation educator. I just got a job working for the public school district here in Yakima. And so my biggest thing is education. I think our leaders and the people that are representing us need to be educated about us. I think a lot of people get up on that podium and they start talking about stuff that they have no idea about. And so I think education is really important. You know, another thing that I think is really important as well is, and I had it and I lost it. There it goes. Right. Is you know, getting like you said, getting new people in there, you know. You know, I sound like a broken record when I say this. Young people are the future. And you know, I don't have all the skills that all these people that I'm sitting up here with have, but I can learn. I want to learn. I'm ready to learn. And I'm just waiting for someone to teach me. And I think another thing that's really important is what we're doing here right now. Continuing to stand up and talk about our experiences and what we need until someone listens. And so I think, you know, just showing up, continuing to do what we're doing, continuing to advocate for ourselves and other people is also really important. You know, and I will continue to do it until, you know, we get the things that we need and deserve as humans. And everyone needs to remember that, you know, LGBTQ plus people and young people and, you know, all of these marginalized communities have always been here. We will always be here. You know, we're not going anywhere.
Come on.
And so I think that's really important for everyone to remember.
Let me just look at that real
Yeah.
quick, you know. If they got it on the phone, they tell you. I just wanted to make sure because I want to specifically, the question was regarding state agencies, and I want to be real specific who I'm speaking to right now. So all of the leaders in the community, or excuse me, leaders in this room of state agencies, are there leaders in this room right now? Like you're in top on executive levels? And no executive levels in here? Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. All right. Well, if you know, look, they scared to raise their hand. Okay, that's all right. That's okay, because I'm gonna speak directly to you. And if you're not on the executive level, then I want you to take the message back because this is very important. Okay. So the question was, what do we have to say for the state agencies, right? What advice? I need you to mean what you say. I need you to mean what you say and say what you mean. Let me say it differently. It's called accountability. It's called accountability. That's it. And I wrote something down, but I'm just gonna go off it. I ain't even gonna read it because at the end of the day, accountability is what we need. Listen, we all know the data. We have plenty of data. As a matter of fact, we have hundreds of years of data. You know what time it is. We do not have to spell that out anymore. We're done checking off boxes. We done with that. We're done checking off just a box. Don't send me a form to fill out there are data analysts for that, and they're probably in the room right now. We appreciate you. We need the data. We need it. But quite frankly, we have a bunch of data already. It is time to stop just checking off the box. We have to actually do something about the boxes that we already checked. The boxes are already checked. The people are dying. The people are unhoused. The people, I'm talking about large state agencies now. I'm talking about the executive leaderships of state agencies. You have a position to play, and we're done checking off boxes. Don't send me another a spreadsheet talking about how many this, how many that. We already know that. Let me show you what the outcome was when we did this. What'd you say? When you said something about okay, I forgot what you said too, but that's okay. I just want to be very clear about we're done checking off a box. And what I mean by this, and y'all not gonna like it when I say this, but I'm gonna say it. Do not have 400 or 500 organizations applying for one. If you know for a fact that there's only 1 or 2 people gonna get it, don't you work them folks up. Don't do that, especially the Black community, because we different now. Because they gonna come back to me and they're gonna be okay, Auntie Latrice, but you said, and I'm gonna say, but they said, okay. So at the end of the day, we're done checking off boxes. It's there, the data's there. Let's work with the data that we have. Let's change the world with the data that we have. We'll get you some more data later, but right now we're in position to move. So let's move. Let's go. Progression.
For the rural and tribal communities, I think it's about getting out there. And we talked about, visiting Eastern Washington, but some of the staff haven't ever been to our reservation. And so, come see what we're living, don't read about it. Don't do Zooms. Don't, just like get out there and see where we're living and how we're living. And, that we can't get comfortable in just feeling like we're leading the nation as Washington state, because we're also lagging at the international level, on the global level. The United States and Canada are the only 2 nations in the world that haven't acknowledged or signed on to the Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So around the globe, all of the other countries are recognizing those rights of our peoples. And so here in the United States, that's still not, they haven't. So I think there's still work to do. And, it's recognizing those basic human rights, and that we have hundreds of years of, the systematic oppression, and we need to start in the healing process, because like everybody said here, we have the data, we know how we've been harmed. We can tell you again and again and again what these disparities are in our community. But the reality is that, you know, our lands and our people were taken by force, and it wasn't that long ago. You know, this is our great grandparents still remember this, you know, and so the trauma is real, and that intergenerational trauma that our communities are still facing is real. And, you know, we need to work towards undoing some of those systems and those laws that have been in place. The year before I was born, it was illegal to practice our own religion. And so still to this day, there's people that it's like underground, and it feels like to be indigenous, to be tribal, we have to hide that. And so I feel like we have a long ways to go, but I'm excited about everybody here at this conference and those that are willing to make change, and just don't be scared. You know, don't fall into that, you know, the systems that you're working in. Like, be bold, be brave, you know, let's make these changes, because collectively that's how it's going to happen. We can't leave it up to one individual. We can't scapegoat one agency. It's going to take the whole state and all of the employees from the top down to make these changes.
I'm gonna read the question again. I just, for myself, so it's, how can we ensure that our state agencies integrate equity and community engagement, especially for marginalized communities and rural and tribal areas? So I think about this as a multifaceted approach, really. And Victor alluded to this at the very beginning. It starts with policy. I mean, policy is what's going to drive this. And so building frameworks that prioritize, I think you mentioned this, equity and community engagement efforts. I believe that in order to guide agencies, we need to, you know, engage our communities by ensuring all voices are heard, right? Beyond policy, it's about building capacity. We need to train. We need to train all staff. Cultural competencies have to be part of that. Communicate with diverse populations. In the Latino community, I think it's very important, considering that we're 1.509 million out of 7 million residents here in the state of Washington. We also have to employ community development officers or community liaisons who are familiar with the trusted communities that are being served, right? These liaisons begin to be the bridge that can help with the gaps and facilitate discussions and in community engagement. And I know some of this is already happening. So I'm just responding to the question here. You know, beyond that, we need collaborative efforts, partnerships. We need to be building relationships locally, tribal governments, community leaders. As well, we need to foster collaboration between the state agencies, which is something that has been happening. And I've seen it on my end. I can't speak for everyone. I've seen it this past year. As well, I would say that we need to have a more inclusive and accessible engagement methods. And what I mean is that we need to make sure that, and again, we're doing this. We have virtual platforms. We have outreach through social media. We're doing this through multi-languages. That has to be part of the formula in order to ensure state agencies are integrating this community engagement. I would say that, and again, it was alluded to earlier, is we need to dedicate money to this. There has to be funding that's going to be, and in order for that to happen, I would say that the decisions need to be based on data. It has to be data driven. And so I know even in our part, we have been doing community mapping and assessment and surveying to understand our community more. And I think that's going to help with the you know, to making decisions. So thank you.
So to ensure equity in laws and state agencies, we have to know about, acknowledge, and actually actively change what has been built on homophobia, racism, sexism, transphobia, all these things that we as a country, as a state, have been built on, we have to acknowledge them and actively try to change them. We have to actually just be active in what we actually say. We just don't just say we're going to do a thing and try to do it, actually do it. We representatives of these agencies, has been said, have to go out and actively see what's happening in the communities that they're trying to help. We as a community want actual representation, and agencies should actively listen instead of just passively listen. And when agencies do bring people from community in, and you have a chance to talk with them and not at them, like you have opinions, we have opinions, we are all people. We should be talking instead of just listening. We should have conversations. And as been said through all of this, have follow through. Make sure that what you say is what you mean and actively do it.
So we're going to close out our panel with that last question as our time is coming to an end. But I do want to name that this is more than just a panel, and this is more than just one conversation. This is the beginning of a dialogue. And I hope that what you heard here energizes you to learn more, to dig deep into your own communities that you're living in, and to continue to engage in equity work. Like, and we talk about data-driven strategies. We're talking about learning, like, this is data. Data is more than numbers. Like, all of these folks up here told you what their communities need. Take that, listen. This is the beginning of a conversation. So take that to heart. Think about it. Feel free to engage with our panelists after. I want to thank you all for coming and for listening and for opening up your minds to the panelists. And I want to thank everyone on stage for sharing your lived experiences with us.
Yeah.